I think my friend and I were almost trafficked. Okay, I am just looking for opinions on this encounter because, although it was years ago, I always think about it and wonder WTF. So basically, we were crossing the border from Costa Rica to Nicaragua. The border has a long-standing line where you wait to go through border control, and there are a bunch of taxis on the other side. The line is long. My friend and I, both female and 23 years at the time, we are at the back of the line. This man comes up to us and is speaking Spanish. We don't understand, but he guides us toward the front of the line and puts us next to two other American girls. We are confused and ask what is going on, but he says in broken English, "You four together, I take you in taxi." We think it's weird, but we did skip some of the line, so we stay next to the girls. We talk to them, and we all agree we think it's very strange he put the only four young backpacking girls together when we clearly don't know each other, and is aggressively making sure we get in his taxi once we cross the border. Anyways, we cross the border and he is waiting for us. He begins leading us to his taxi. We tell him no and immediately jump into another taxi with two male backpackers that seemed safe. As we look back, we see another guy yelling at the guy who was trying to get us to come with him. They are fighting. He seems to maybe even hit him on the head for possibly not getting us in the car. Was this normal, or was he about to traffic all four of us? Man keeps trying to come into my house. I, 20F, recently moved into a new apartment with my BF who works away for long periods of time. An older man, 50, started to become friendly with me knowing I was new to the complex. I made the mistake of telling him I live with my partner, but he's away for work for a while. Almost every day after that, he came knocking on my door and waiting if I didn't answer. He would leave after 5 minutes of knocking with no answer. One time, I was out in the common grass area playing with my brother, 2M, that I would occasionally have over. I saw him coming my way and quickly picked my brother up. The man started making conversation, asking about my brother, and literally tried to grab him out of my arms. I held onto my brother tight and pulled away. And as he started to cry, I made an excuse that I have to go feed him and walked away. That was the last time I went near that man with my brother. I'm extremely bad with confrontation, as you can tell. A few days later, I heard a knock at my door and opened it without thinking. He walked straight past me into my apartment without even saying a singe word, just smiling. I asked him if he was doing okay. He said, "I'm good. Just wanted to see what your place looked like from the inside," and started walking into every room. He checked all my windows and commented, "So all your windows have bars on them, except the bathroom." I nervously laughed and said, "Yeah, I guess they do." I didn't know what to do, so I walked out into the front garden hoping he would follow me out of the apartment to try to talk to me. I just wanted him out, but was scared to anger him. I could tell he didn't seem like he was right in the head. Once he came out the front, I closed my door and said, "I have to go to the shop now, sorry it's going to close soon," and walked off. That night, while hanging my washing out, another neighbor introduced herself, 34F. I told her what happened and asked if she knew the man. Apparently, he had been doing the exact same things to her. She told her partner that this creepy neighbor was doing the same things too, a young girl, me, and that was his last straw. He ended up going and talking to the older man. After that, the older man only tried one more time that I know of to knock on my door, which I hid in my kitchen for 10 minutes until he left. I haven't heard anything since, and haven't seen him around. But I wake up at night panicking, thinking that he's planning on doing something to me. A big man in a truck starts following and cussing me out. So this happened about 5 years ago. A little background first, my dad had trained me in how to keep calm in stressful or life and death situations. I did the same with my kids. My kids were 12 and 13 years old and in the back seat. My elderly mom was right next to me. We had just finished our errands, and I asked if anyone wanted to go to the popular small lake that has a one-way road going around it about 1 mile circular before going home. They all immediately wanted to do so, mostly to see the new duck chicks. There is a maximum speed limit of 20 miles per hour and several places to exit if you don't want to go completely around. The reason for the low speed limit is a lot of people go here for fishing, walking or jogging. We got to see the baby ducks and slowed to a stop at times. There wasn't other cars behind us yet, to awe over the tiny chicks. I was halfway around when this huge man in a big truck went racing around the lake going about 50 miles per hour. There was a lot of screaming from people racing to get out of his way. I immediately started to speed up to take an exit off the road. I was almost there when I heard the truck engine. My mom screamed the kids were frozen in fear as I looked into the rearview mirror. He was coming up fast on me. He slammed on the brakes and came just inches from hitting the back of my car, then started following me aggressive and screaming all sorts of insults at me. I sped up and got out there, but he kept following me. My mom was freaking out. My kids were terrified, but doing the breathing exercises that I taught them to keep themselves calm. I yelled at my mom to shut the fuck up. I threw my cell phone to my oldest son and told him to call 911 and inform the dispatcher that we were headed to the police station and to please have a few cops waiting for us. He did so, and at times screaming in fear as this man went down a side street and turned back to ram us off the road. He would get in front of me and slam on brakes, parked blocking the road, or do a pit maneuver. I later thanked God that my dad had been in the military and taught me maneuvers to avoid aggressive drivers. I was able to avoid all the things he was doing. The dispatcher heard the terrified screams every time I had to brake hard or swing the car around. I was cussing like crazy. We made to the police station where there were several cops waiting for us. The guy was so angry that I don't think he realized where we were. He parked right behind me to block me in. Got out of his truck still screaming around to my side. Got even more angry when the cops wouldn't let him near me. He swung out and punched one of the cops so hard in the head that he was knocked out. He got tasered and sprayed as he was tackled down. It took several cops to hold him down when he suddenly went quiet. He suddenly realized just where he was and began struggling again, saying that they couldn't arrest him because he didn't know they were cops at the moment. I let out a relieved breath once he was in the back seat of a cop car. Paramedics came to check us all out. My mom had to be taken to the ER for extremely high blood pressure and suffering from chest pains. My kids and I were taken in as well. The moment that they realized that they were safe, the hysterical crying and clinging to me started. I was shaking and felt cold despite the warm temperatures. I was told that I was in shock. After we all came home except for my mom, who had to stay overnight. The kids were too terrified to sleep in their beds and wanted to sleep with me, but we were all too wired up to sleep, so I made some sleepy time tea and gave them melatonin. I, on the other hand, didn't take anything, and the comforting noises my home usually makes became scary. A few days later, I got a call from one of the arresting officers who told me that the man had several arrest warrants on him for similar things. He also told me that the guy had every intention of killing me and everyone else in my car simply because he was angry and wanted to release it. So it was a good thing that I called 911 and went to the police station. It would take me a few weeks before I could fall asleep easily again. I had to put my kids into counseling, and I still have nightmares from it, but it's really rare now. Being watched by a neighbor. A couple of weeks ago, someone had dropped groceries at my door with 2 coffees. The groceries were very odd, had lubricant, lollipops, not your normal grocery shop. I thought it was delivered to the wrong apartment, and as there was no receipt on confirmation in the bag, I left it in the lobby, but no one claimed it. A week later, a letter was slipped under my door with $200 in it. The letter was by a man talking about his recent hardship and how he'd like to talk to me and hear my voice. Again, I was a little naive, so I took the note to my building manager thinking it was for someone else. He thought it was strange, so called the number on the letter, and it turns out it was a man in the building next door saying he wants to be my friend. The buildings are really close together, and you can see into the apartments if the blinds are open. My building manager told him to leave me alone and to stay out of the building. I thought it was over, but today I heard someone pacing in the hallway outside my apartment for a couple of minutes. I went to leave an hour later, and there was a coin in front of my door dead center, like it had been placed there. The only way it could get there would be if it was placed, or if my neighbor dropped it, as my neighbor should be the only other person that walks past my door. But based on where I found it, it makes me feel it was deliberately placed. I wouldn't think twice about the coin, but with what's been happening, it's making me really anxious. After prepaying for gas inside, I found a man repeatedly trying to open my passenger side. This happened 15 years ago, when I was 23. I had left my boyfriend's place in the city and needed to get gas. The sun had just set, so it was finally dark. I picked a gas station still in the city, close to a bridge that then feeds into the highway. The pump had a prepay sign, so I went inside to prepay before filling up. I always locked my car before doing things like that. This was before automatic locks were standard on all cars. I still shudder to think about what might have happened if I hadn't done that, because of what happened next. After prepaying, I walked back to my car, and as I approached driver's side, I noticed a man on the passenger side, trying to anxiously open my passenger door, several times rapidly. He looks up and notices me. He looks a little panicked and annoyed. Startled, I asked him to please step away. I look around. No other cars at the station. It's just me. Seeming more annoyed than despaired, he says, You give me ride over the bridge, please, I need ride." He again tries to open the door. Thank God I hadn't pressed unlock yet. And I said no, firmly, and asked him again to step away. He said, "Come on, it's only a short distance." And I said, "Well, if it's so short a distance, then he can walk. It's a nice evening, not too cold out." He glared at me, not happy, not moving. I commanded once more to please step away, right now. "Have a good evening, sir, but you need to go." I stared him down as he finally, slowly sulked off, again glaring at me. I waited until he was pretty far away, and only then did I frantically unlock the car and speed off. I still see that image of me walking back to my car from prepaying inside, only to find him anxiously pulling the door handle many times. He did this before noticing my approach. What if I hadn't locked it? Would he have been waiting there inside, gun or knife in hand, threatening me to drive off with him? Or did he simply just need a ride? I'll never know. But as a petite, attractive, from how men treated me back then, early 20s woman alone at night, there was no way in hell I was letting that man in my locked car. I just always wonder, what if I hadn't locked it? There was no auto lock feature then. I may have stepped into that car and into a nightmare. Creepy encounter on bike trail that still gets to me. Okay, so this happened when I was 21F. I'm currently 27. Back then I believed that I made a rookie mistake, but have since learned my lesson and have taken precautions so that this doesn't happen again. I'm an avid mountain biker. Ever since I was about 13. 14, I've always loved riding on the trails. It was good exercise, but I mostly liked to just listen to music and pedal. Never tried to time myself on a particular trail or anything. All I really did was keep track of my miles. So I remember this one day in particular. It may sound a tad bit far-fetched, so I welcome skepticism with open arms. I'm simply trying to get this off of my chest, and hopefully it's a wake-up call for anyone that was as trusting as I was. So I decided to go on a day ride at this one spot. I'd been there before, but it wasn't one of my go-to trails, so I wasn't super familiar with it. I was familiar enough with it, though, to where I would be okay going down the trails I had done in the past. So upon getting there, I was getting my pack ready. I met this one girl that was doing the same. We started talking and hit it off pretty well. At the time, she honestly seemed like someone I could be friends with. She introduced me to her boyfriend, who was also a mountain biker. Once again, no red flags, very friendly. They seemed to have a very healthy relationship. They both seemed to be about my age, ballpark, give or take. They asked me if I wanted to take a ride with them down their favorite trail. I didn't see any harm in it. Plus, I wanted to learn the area better for potential future rides. So the trail was one that I had never been on before. The two of them were also faster than me, like a lot faster. I never backed down from a challenge. I kept up, albeit probably being about 10 feet behind them the whole time. We stopped briefly to take a water break, and I noticed that the girl had strategically left her backpack open. Like she closed it, but then opened it back up a little bit. Seemed harmless then, but makes more sense now. Without any sort of warning, and while I was taking a pee break in the trees, the two of them started laughing and took off. I was in a compromised position, so I had to hurry up and conclude my business to be able to catch them. By the time I made it back to my bike, they were both completely out of sight. Not to mention, both of my tires had been slashed. I was stranded. I sat down for about 10 minutes to decide what I was going to do. The sun was at peak capacity, and I remember feeling extremely lightheaded, though I'm pretty sure this was related to shock. I grabbed my bike and started walking down the trail. After about 15 minutes of walking, I came across a wire on the trail. It was tied onto two smaller trees. Had I been riding, that could have easily slit my throat. But the fact that they went through the trouble of slashing my tires made me question this. I hadn't seen them, so this may or may not have been them. Or they could have potentially left it there to try and snare another rider. I honestly don't know, and don't much think about that part anymore. The what-its make the whole thing more frustrating. Regardless, I used my Swiss Army knife to remove the wire. I wasn't about to go any further down the trail, so I pushed my bike in the opposite direction that I came from. Close to 6 miles later, I made it back to my car. There is a bike rental shop nearby that I stopped at and asked them about the two. I gave them a description of the two, but wasn't able to give them enough to have them identified. They offered to call the police, but after the day I had, I just wanted to go home. I do regret this, because over the years I had always wondered if they did this to anyone else. I did feel a level of guilt over this. I have never been back to that trail. I'm still a mountain biker, but I quit going alone since then. Thankfully, my husband is a fellow mountain biker, and I always have a buddy. Please stay safe, everyone, and don't always trust a pretty face.